28th of April 1945. At the age of 14, I started sailing in Durban Harbour, sailing the Point Yacht Club sponsored cadets. Spent many years racing cadets, and then as one progressed to dabchicks. I didn't own a dabchick, but I did sail them quite a lot. And after the dabchicks, I crewed on sprogs for several years, went to many national regattas crewing. Then we built, my father and I and my brother and I built a sprog. I then sailed that sprog for many years up until, as I say, 1966. I think 66 or 67 was my last sprog national. And then in 1967, I moved to Port Elizabeth and started sailing at Red House. Bought my first fin. 353 was my first boat. It was fiberglass, built by Len Morrison in Durban. I had some lead in mine because they were slightly underweight, but it was not a bad thing. It's Ernie's brother. I obviously knew Ernie well because he was one of the senior members of the club and I was a junior. His brother Len Morrison built a lot of fins, and they were very nicely built. They were certainly perfectly good fiberglass fins. Len Morrison started making them. There was a guy called Jimmy the Indian who used to make laminated fin hulls. He was called Jimmy the Indian. The real old guys at my age will remember Jimmy the Indian. He used to build sprogs as well as some laminated fins. I'm not sure when Len Morrison produced the first fiberglass fin. There was someone in Cape Town that also built some fiberglass boats. MSM. Those were the Cape Town fiberglass fins. In all, I've had 3 fins over the years. First in fins. Many in sprogs, but first in fins, yeah. I went to the 1968 National at Saldanha. Paul Elfstrom, Willie Covida. I think there were 4 world champions there that year. Elfstrom won that regatta in 68. 1968, 86 fins, yeah, fantastic regatta. So that was my first regatta in fins. I came 15th, and at the end of the first beat, you could have bought my boat for 50 Rand. I was so wrecked. That was my baptism of fire in fins, yeah. I think I came 15th overall. I got a 9th one race, which I was very excited about, but the Navy set the weather mark on the first beat, and I think they got their coordinates wrong because I'm sure it was about a 3-mile beat to the first mark. As I mentioned earlier, you could have bought my fin for 50 Rand at that weather mark. I was so wrecked. I sailed in the same race. Let's not say I competed against him. I think there's little doubt that Paul Elfstrom was the greatest fin sailor. The South African Bruce McCurrick, who actually crewed for Paul, I think that they won a world champs 2-man boat. I can't remember what it was now. But yeah, Elfstrom definitely was in a league of his own, as far as I'm concerned. And no matter what boat he sailed, he was very, very quick. And when you asked him where he came in the regatta, if he came second, he said, no, I didn't win it. He didn't tell you he came second. He just said, no, I didn't win it. So his philosophy was win. He had to win. And he certainly was more than capable of that. Yeah, he wasn't physically much different from any of us, really. You know, he just was extremely skillful at getting the most out of any boat that he sailed. His ability to fine-tune the boats that he sailed, I think that was his secret. And of course, his tactical knowledge of wind shifts and things like that were obviously also very good. But I think his real skill lay in his ability to get maximum boat speed out of a boat, playing with it, tuning it, mast, sails, whatever. That was his forte, really. I sailed for a short while in PE before I was transferred, mainly at Red House, fantastic club, Red House. We also did go offshore quite often in PE. I moved to the Transvaal in 69 or 70, something like that. So I sailed extensively in the Transvaal at Reed Flay. I sailed at Vaal Dam. I had a little dwelling on Vaal Dam, so I sailed extensively on Vaal Dam at Aeolians and travelled to all the regattas, Allemanskraal, etc., etc. So I certainly sailed a lot at VLC. Germiston Lake was another venue that we sailed a lot at. So I certainly sailed a lot in the Transvaal. Our home club was Aeolians. We called them shacks. It was like a a double garage, a long double garage. We all had shacks there, so Friday nights we'd go down to Orleans and we'd sail in North Bay off Orleans. We stayed at a place called Maritimo, that's right. Club Naval was the main club, and then the Finns were based at a place called Maritimo, just up the coast. But sailing in the LM Bay is not like the open ocean. You don't get the same sea action, really. Yeah, it's a little bit rough, but certainly not like sailing offshore Durban, where things are a lot different. So, yes, I came from inland to offshore, but having sailed offshore in Durban for years and other boats, that really wasn't a problem. And as I said, LM is not a great test of your sea skills. In 71, we also sailed in the Lorenzo Marks, and that was the Portuguese Olympic trials. They sent a team out to sail in the Lorenzo Marks in 71. I also sailed in that regatta. It was called the Fin de Oro. We used to go and race in the Lorenzo Marks for this beautiful trophy called the Fin de Oro. And I think Don Thorpe was the guy who won it the year the Portuguese Olympic team were there. They sent out 5 or 6 skippers, and they raced the Fin de Oro with us. So fins were pretty popular then, and I can't remember. We must have had at least 50 or 60 or 50 boats. If you asked me for a guess, I'd say between 40 and 50 boats, but I'd be guessing. But the years leading up to my win in 72 in the Lorenzo Marks were really all in the Transvaal. There was more than one potential winner up to the last race. I was leading the race, and I think because I didn't cover the second man, I covered the third man. I just can't think of his name. But it wasn't important that the second man, if he beat me, that didn't matter. It was the third person. I had to sit on the third person because it was light conditions and a bit fluky. I've got a feeling that Ligeti, who came second overall, won that race, and I was only second in that last race. I think it was Jack Ligeti from Orleans. I know the last race was quite critical, and Jack rounded the mark just behind me, but the third person, I sat on the third person because it was important that the third person didn't come through. It was a very tense last race, but I think it was Jack Ligeti. There is one interesting feature about that, is that I used a wooden mast manufactured by my brother. I ordered a Bruder mast, and the Bruder mast lasted me one race, and I broke it. So we cut the mast up into 1 meter pieces, and my brother, who was a very skilled carpenter, he wasn't a carpenter, but he was skilled with his hands, he built me a mast. So the mast I won the national in Lorenzo Marks was actually built by my brother Neil. I had a brand new fin built, 485 I think was the second boat. I actually bought my fin from someone at Reedflay, believe it or not, which was a very successful boat. I was hanging out many years after 77. I was hanging out at Saldanha Bay in a national. I think I was lying about 4th or 5th, and I was hurting because I've never been that heavy. I came ashore and said, that's it, I'm not sailing a dinghy again, and I sold the boat. No, unfortunately not. I tried every year, but only came right in 72 and 77. And the Barry Barber, who also won a national, I sailed a lot against him. Francie Girlestone was a tough opponent. Dick Legmore and his wife Sandy were in the Transvaal, yes, and knew them well and sailed against them at Orleans a lot. Yes, knew Helmut Stoch. He won the Finn National in 1960 at Bethlehem. I think it's Loch Athlone where he won it, yeah. He went to the Olympics too for us, actually. I'm not sure if it was Finns or Flying Dutchman, but yes, Helmut Stoch, famous yachtsman. Phil Barker, he was based in Durban. He was a light weather specialist, and I think they must have had a very light regatta for Phil to win it, but he certainly was a very capable yachtsman, but he was very light, physically light as well. Bourne Woody, he went to the Olympics actually in 64. I remember Harvey Blogg, yes. I do remember him. Not well, he wasn't, I didn't spend a lot of time with him, but I remember the name well. He was based in the Transvaal, wasn't he? Pete Barrett was an Olympic silver medalist. Radarschel, he's an Austrian guy, Hubert Radarschel, very good skipper too. It could be Abe Benefield, it could be the Abe Benefield trophy, I'm not sure. Yes, there's a picture. I think one of your pictures, there's a picture of me and Lorenzo Marx receiving that trophy, and I'm holding the glass case with a fin inside in '72 when I won that national. So Ali was a real. We call him an animal because he was incredibly strong. I remember when he first burst onto the scene, he certainly made an impact instantly. He was very, very strong, and I'd never seen anyone hang out like that. A real grafter on the boat. Yeah, I think he was quite a lot younger than me. I'm pretty sure he was. He certainly looked younger than me. Yes, he must have been. He was younger and stronger. Nigel Scholes was in PE. He was an Englishman. He moved to South Africa some years before. They ran a business, a machine tool business. Him and his father, I think it was. Ritter's super quick downwind, and he had a wooden laminated hull, which some of those wooden hulls were very, very quick, and he had one of those, and his downwind speed was phenomenal. Al Lenstra, whose fin you have, was a very good sailor, excellent sailor, very, very good. He was always highly competitive. Good friend of mine for many, many years. Sailed at Germiston Lake, VLC, against Al for many, many years. John Thorpe was another one, both Transwaalers, also excellent. Weekend sailing and hanging out in the boat at home during the week. I used to take my boat home Sunday night, and during 2 or 3 nights in the week I'd hang out for half an hour, because as you well know, hanging out in a fin is painful. Despite the granny sticks we used to use, I don't know if you guys still use granny sticks, but we had granny sticks which it was a broomstick which we'd lodge inside the gunnel and hang on to it with your forward hand, just to take some of the pressure off your legs. There was no limitation to the weight jackets you could wear in those days. So my wife would make me up 3 or 4 layers of blanket, and just before the start, one would let the main out and end up ditching yourself in the water, and then sheet in and hope to hell your legs didn't break as you picked up these tons of water in your jacket. But it was so heavy that we needed a thing called a granny stick. Someone invented a granny stick, and one was able to stick it down just inside the gunnel, and it latched onto one of the stringers of the hull. You'd hang on to that with your forward hand, having cleated the main. It just took some load off, but it certainly helped when you were carrying huge weights like we used to. Apparently there's a limitation now. I think you can't wear too much, but nowadays you just kept layering on blankets. The wives would make up these little blanket jackets, and you'd put them one on top of the other. And when it was really howling, you'd put 4 on. If it was light, you'd only put 1 on.